Buongiorno, sono Clara Maveglia.
Good morning. My name is Clara Maveglia from the Cultural Entrepreneurship Institute, Berlin. Today we are in Capri and we shall interview in a while Mr. Antonio Monda. Welcome, Antonio Monda. Well, fine. Good morning. I'm happy we made it, that we are here in this wonderful scenario, this wonderful natural scenario, the island of Capri. Nothing compares to Capri. It's the most beautiful place in the world. First of all, can you introduce yourself? With pleasure. My name is Antonio Monda. I've been living in New York for 23 years now, but I'm from the south of Italy, one side of the family from Calabria, another one from Campania. I've always been living in Rome before moving to New York, where I carry out many activities, but they're all inspired by one idea. I am a professor at the university, at the New York University. I teach cinema at the Department of Cinema. And the second activity is writer. I'm a writer. I've published 10 books, 5 novels, and 5 essay books. And the third activity is that of organizing cultural activities. I'm the director of the Rome Cinema Festival. This year I will direct the second edition and the Le Conversazioni Festival together with Davide Azzolini. We founded it together 10 years ago. No, this is the 11th edition, I should say. We've been organizing this festival and bringing it to many places. 8 years in New York, 2 years in Rome, 2 years in Bogota, and we are working to take this festival to 2 other big cities. Our idea is that of organizing a light festival, to take a light approach to it, but at the same time, a profound approach is needed. And we need to bring it all over the world. We wish to bring it all over the world. But first of all, before going to the quick of the matter, can you tell us how come? I mean, how did this idea come to your mind? Well, I should tell you a story. 11 years ago, Davide Azzolini, he's a co-organizer but also a dear friend of mine. He came to my house, to my place in New York, for dinner. I had very important guests, Richard Ford, Paul Auster, City host, but Nathaniel and Glander. It was a seated dinner, 10 people, and it was very amusing, very nice time. We had a nice time together. We said very profound things, but in a very light manner. We had not to prove anything. But at the end, Davide told me, wonderful, we had such a nice time. Why don't we do this in public? He thought that the public would appreciate this non academic approach, a very conversational approach. That's why we named it Le Conversazioni. I said, well, it's a wonderful idea, but I will do this only in the most beautiful place in the world. That's why we came to Capri. The first year we had this, what we call the dream team, only 5 writers, but the best possible team. We had Nathaniel Englander, David Foster Wallace, Jonathan Franz, and Jeffrey Eugene, and Zadie Smith. It had such a big impact. There's still a very nice photograph, which is very famous. It was so successful that we were able to find the money and then persuade many other great writers. Just think of Martin Amis, Ian McEwan, Wallace Inca, Donna Tartt, Jonathan Safran Foer, Chuck Palahniuk, and so many others. We were able to convince them, and they came to Capri. How can you meet them? How come you had these great writers at home for dinner? Well, I can do that because it's in the DNA of my family. It runs in my family. We have a tradition in terms of entertaining guests, and my father did that. My grandfather did that. My uncles did that. And secondly, I also work for 2 newspapers, and for RAI, for La Repubblica, for the cultural page. I often must have a dialogue with these people. For me, being a journalist or acting as a journalist is not enough for me. I want to understand them. So I started to invite them for dinner, and I was amazed by the fact that these great writers, Philip Roth, Sobello, Gay Talese, Edna O'Brien, Annie Proulx, may quote many of them. And well, they accepted the invitation because they saw that I was disinterested. It was a pleasure for them to come. I should confess that my wife is a very good cook. Of course, this helps. And they started to come, and this legend, this myth started to build up about a house where you had to fear nothing and you could eat very delicious food, and there were a lot of stars because there is also the cinema side, because Martin Scorsese, Meryl Streep, John Turturro were my guests very often. So there's no secret. There's just the fact that I do not ask for anything. My guests do not ask for anything. We just enjoy the pleasure to be together at dinner. Well, this is also an Italian tradition, especially in the south of Italy. I'm not saying that in the north they don't do it, but this is quintessential here. Well, you mentioned so many people, but many men, not many women. Well, you're right, but actually, I may mention Meryl Streep and Edna Bryant, Jamaica Kincaid, Annie Proulx, Zadie Smith. No, no, no. It's gender balanced list. It was just by chance that I mentioned only men. Well, maybe they appreciate your cuisine more. Men appreciate your cuisine more. Well, I must say one thing: New York cannot boast a strong tradition in terms of entertaining at home just for the sake of the pleasure of entertaining guests. Or better, if they hold some cocktail party, the host and the hostess do not cook themselves, and this makes the difference, a big difference. It cools down the atmosphere. Secondly, all these cocktail parties uh, uh, are offered just because there is the launch of a book or the premiere of a play. At my home, we never do that. There's never a launch of the book or whatever. Neither mine nor my guests' books. Well, conversation, it provides the foundation for philosophy. Martha Nussbaum states that literature is closely connected to philosophy. It is a sort of a branch of philosophy. What do you think about this? Any creative element, any element which is generated by our psyche, but also by our sensitivity, is an element of philosophical speculation. The point is, does speculation come afterwards, or does it arise at the same time with the creative element? Well, fine. So let's stick to the culinary tradition. You said to me that your wife is a wonderful cook. Can you tell us how does she reconcile the professional life with the family life? Well, my wife has been working for 12 years for the Italian Trade Center. That is to say, the center that promotes Italian trade. We've got three children. When our children became adolescents, she stopped working because she needed to be very close to them. And she became a food blogger. She experiments a lot with her tradition. She's from Jamaica. She likes to mix up her own tradition with my tradition, that is to say, the Italian tradition. On top of that, we live in a wonderful place, which is really the realm of the melting pots, New York. So our culture is a fusion of many things, but she hates the term fusion, I must say. Can you disclose any secret to us and personal tastes? No, 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 please, I cannot do that. One of the secrets of my house is not telling secrets. But I can tell you just one thing. There is a tradition. We honor a tradition. Whenever a guest appreciates a lot a recipe, from that day on, that recipe is named after our guest. There is a cake. I will just mention one. There is a ricotta and pears cake named after Renzo Piano. But I just mentioned this because I know that Renzo doesn't care. So you are a cultural entrepreneur because this it really partakes of this idea of enhancing culture and giving value, adding value to culture. Whereas I think that food is culture. My wife is writing a book about this because food holds a value which goes far beyond satisfying our appetite. I believe a lot in the value of sharing things around the table But the things that I do when I teach a lesson at university, if I write an article, if I hold this festival, Le Conversazioni in Capri, they are all inspired by one idea, communicating and conveying my idea. My father always told me a proverb, which he told it was a Chinese proverb, but it was not a Chinese proverb. He probably invented it, but I still stick to this proverb. He said, if I give you one thing and give me back one thing, in the end, each of us has got one thing. But if you give me an idea and I give you an idea, in the end, we ultimately have in our hands two ideas. This is the foundation of my philosophy and my life. So tell us, how did you decide to go to New York, to move there? Well, it's a long story. To cut a long story short, I may say I always wished to do that, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. I became an orphan. My father died when I was 11, and then I took my diploma, high school diploma. My mother wanted me to travel, and she said, "Go to America." I went to visit an uncle in California. I was not so much struck by California, and then I started to appreciate California afterwards. And I traveled for 2 months, and I spent the last week in New York. My mother said, "You must go to New York." At that time, she had never gone to New York, but she knew it was a wonderful city, and I fell in love with New York. When I got to New York in a taxi at sunset, I entered the city and I saw these skyscrapers, uh, bright skyscrapers, and the taxi driver said, "Welcome to the heart of the world." He felt my emotion, and still today I feel the same emotion. It's the city I love most in the world. I prefer it. I like it more than others, of course. There are other wonderful cities, Paris, Rome, Venice. But New York is the city par excellence. That's why I chose to live there. I started from scratch. I was the I was a superintendent. I was a bit more than a janitor and a bit less than a apartment flat administrator. And I did that to earn a living for 5 years. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm proud of it. At that time, I was a bit ashamed because I had to mop the staircase. But it was an incredible experience. I still have, I'm still firmly believe that not everything starts in New York, but all things stop at New York sooner or later. So it's the heart, it's the center. Now, in this ode to New York, tell me, what is the role played in this love for New York, your Italian origin? I mean, the fact that you're Italian, I mean, does this fact allow you to experience New York in a different way? Well, I'll tell you one thing. I wrote 5 novels. They are part of a project about New York. They are all set in New York, and they are all set in a different decades to tell the story of the 20th century. And they're selling well. I'm very happy. They're selling well in Italy too. Now, to be more precise in answering your question, the fact that I'm an Italian, I'm from Italy. I mean, this origin is. I mean, New York is the only place in the world that you know and understand already for many reasons. First of all, you've always seen it everywhere. Shanghai, Tokyo. How many people know what Tokyo looks like? I mean, New York, we've seen it in movies and postcards everywhere. Secondly, it's in New York's DNA. It was made for accepting and welcoming people, welcoming immigrants. I must say that Naples lies in the same parallel as Naples. Uh, Now you hinted at Naples. Why is Capri the most beautiful place in the world? Well, no discussion about it. This is not debatable. Did you ever ask yourself, did you ever wonder why the Emperor Tiberius, who was as powerful as Obama plus Putin plus Merkel plus Cameron put together, at a certain point, he leaves everything behind and comes to Capri and he rules the world from Capri. You still see the ruins there of his palace because he understood that this was the most beautiful place in the world. There was no force, no power, nothing which would be tantamount or would be equal on the same footing as this wonder. This is a place that in the last 2 millennia, the islanders are so accustomed to welcoming foreigners. There are only a few ugly things, and then there is a wonderful combination which makes it unique. A dramatic, epic landscape, uh, cliffs hanging over the sea, covered with lush vegetation, and then there's something enchanting, lovely, and it's blessed by God because there are colors, bougainvillea. There's no place like Capri, not even Positano, which is wonderful. It can be compared to Capri, let alone Ischia or other places in the world. Now I'm so sure this is the most beautiful place in the world. So nature plus culture and plus history, yes. This is a place so rich of culture, so many important writers. Just think of figures, upstanding figures: Gorky, Lenin, Oscar Wilde, Neruda, Graham Greene, and Oscar Wilde came here. Malaparte built a wonderful house for himself. This is such an attractive place. It's a rough place. It's not comfortable. I mean, it's so rocky. You must climb up and down and descend down. And this protects it from blight. So fine. Since we wanted to celebrate beauty here in Capri with the conference tomorrow, you travel so much all over the world. You have this also this ability to appreciate beauty from so many perspectives in movies and so on. What is beauty? Can you give us a definition? What is beauty all about? Beauty is harmony, perfect harmony. One of the tragedy of contemporary art is the refusal of beauty. We'll search for a shock, for new things, something that distracts, disturbs, novelties for the sake of the new, of the novelty, but we lose sight of harmony. People who are religious say that beauty is the intuition of the universal in the particular. The universal, God, for those who worship God, and the detail, beauty. Well, you deal with the world of cinema. What is, in your opinion, what is a beautiful film? Well, I'm the director of the Fest, Rome Film Fest. I've always refused films with a noble theme. I'm not interested in noble themes. An article in a newspaper can be enough to represent a noble theme. The theme, whatever it is, must be represented harmoniously. I mean, between the idea of the director and the film, there must be a logical consequence, and the movie must uh, um, realize and adhere to a harmonious plan. So, a film with a nice direction, but which does not put together in a harmonious way all the elements cannot be beautiful. I mean, a movie can be beautiful even if it's a genre film, even if it tells only a few things. You can make a wonderful Western film. It's always split. I mean, beauty is always split from what you are, the story you are telling. Now, should anybody be willing to become a cultural organizer? I mean, what do you need to organize such a festival as Le Conversazioni? First of all, there are the two of us, me and Davide. Davide is acts as a producer, and I as a director in a sense. He's so clever. He's so smart in his role as a production manager. So we have established so many relations, so many contacts. Whenever we get in touch with writers, they recognize us. And then, as soon as they accept our invitation, it's up to him to provide for the traveling procedures and expenditures and hotel accommodations. Each year we decide what is the subject matter of the festival. And from that we start. organizing the festival. We don't like festivals that are, so to say, based upon the launch of a book, because it's like the dinner I was telling you about. We just sit around the table and we talk about a topic. Each year we sort of think about and we ponder over the subject matter, and then we select the right writers for the right theme. Oh, that's very interesting. Let's talk about money. We must talk money. Oh, yes, of course. Like all things and all initiatives are always driven and based upon financing. We've got one important sponsor, the Ministry of Cultural Affairs, and they've been so generous. They've been helping us since the very beginning. Only for 1 year, for technical reasons, they were unable to help us, but for 10 years they've been helping us. So we must thank them, really, from the deep of our heart. And then we have some private sponsors, and luckily they sponsor us every year in exchange for, of course, advertising. We show their logos and all over the world. So we've got both a public and a private, both public and private partners. Well, I wanted to ask you, uh, to what extent is commitment to the cultural heritage important for us? Well, Italy holds more than 60% of the culture of the world cultural heritage. So it's a treasure, big treasure. Of course, Italian culture has a century-long rich tradition, so it would be a crime not to spread it. And culture makes man different from beasts, as Ulysses says in the 26th canto of the Dante's Inferno, when he says, "You were not made to live as brutes, but to follow virtue and knowledge." We follow virtue, knowledge, culture. Without knowledge, as Dante says, we would be savages. So it's a crime not to preserve culture and not to spread culture. Now you are so successful. Should you have more resources available? What would you do? Well, I would bring Le Conversazioni Festival to 50 places. I want to touch all continents. We are already in 3 continents: Europe, North America, and South America. I want to go to Africa, to Asia. I want to go on like this. I believe in this project. I hope to carry on with this project all my life. Now I will direct the film fest in Rome again, but this is a temporary job. I will do it as best as I can, but La Conversazione is the project of my life. You talked about films. What do you think is important for one to write a beautiful book? What does a book need to be beautiful? Well, this is a difficult question. Well, the rules are roughly the same. There are books that, if they are told as a summary, as a synopsis, uh, a woman is unhappy with her husband, she has many lovers, then she's let down, and then she poisons herself, Madame Bovary. If you tell the story like this, it is just a nasty story in the crime news, but it's a masterpiece of literature. A guy kills an old lady and then he's haunted by his crime and he repents. Crime and punishment. A man decides to catch the white whale which gripped his leg. Well, art is also form. Art is the ability to see in this story what is universal in this story. What does Emma Bovary mean for so many men and women, or even Anna Karenina, another great character? What is the meaning of Akab? Akab does not accept the existence of evil. This is an eternal question, eternal issue. He does not accept the indifference of the white whale's nature. But even the betrothed, it is a story, the story of 2 young people. They live near Como. They want to get married, but the local aristocrats doesn't want them to marry because he likes the girl. He likes Lucia. And then there are so many other characters. If you tell these stories like this, they can also be petty chronicle. But Manzoni turns this story into one of the uh, wonderful masterpieces of world literature. The story is only one element in uh, artistic perfection. I'll tell you another story. A fisherman is not able to fish anymore. At long last, he goes out at sea, offshore. He fishes a marlin, and then the sharks devour it. If you tell the story like this, it's meaningless, but it gives you and tells you something very important about the meaning of life. You have to fight down to the end. Well, this makes me think of something you said in the very beginning, at the beginning of this conversation. You come from the south of Italy. So my father was from Naples and my mother from Calabria. Can you tell us about the importance, the value of this, uh, of your genetic inheritance? As a man of the South, I went to Naples yesterday. Today we're here, and this is an invaluable part of the Italian heritage. Well, Naples is a wonderful city, so rich. It's very similar to New York because it has a port, and they lie at the same latitude. And it's a melting pot of the Spanish, French, British culture. I feel I'm inherited this incredible heritage. Uh, well, I'm Neapolitan in the sense that I make light of things, uh, but at the same time, I try to live seriously, but not too much. The wish to embrace, to include, I never want to exclude anybody or anything. This is something I got from my Neapolitan inheritance. And then beauty. Every morning, the Neapolitan citizens look out of the window and they see Capri. This is a blessing. They're so lucky. Yes, that's why we came here. We had the idea that beauty, we want to discuss the idea that beauty elevates the human soul. But how come that there are so many terrible evils that mar beauty? Well, I don't know. I think Dostoevsky said that should men listen to great music, they would become they would be less bad. Well, evil is one of the mysteries of life, and nobody, I mean, we cannot fancy that evil will be totally eradicated. There is a great writer who deals with this theme, Cormac McCarthy. He always deals with this theme, the violence of evil in his novels, the unstoppable evil. Even his more readable and sellable book, No Country for Old Men, there's this character, Anton Chigurh, who is really a great villain. And even here, there is a religious issue. For example, in Christianity, God sends his God because he says, well, men are sinners and they are so lost, totally lost, utterly lost, that I must send my son. I must sacrifice my son. Well, the evil does exist, but also beauty does exist. Going back to Cormac McCarthy says there would be no hell without paradise. So pure beauty goes hand in hand with filth, with misery, with horror. You cannot split the one from the other. And the mistake and the temptation and the tragic attempt made by Jekyll and Hyde, Stevenson tries to create something that separates a goodness from badness, good from evil, and he creates a monster. Now, to send a message to our followers, what is the book or one or two books for young people, especially, that you would recommend that they must read? Classical books, yes. I don't want a canon, but rather some recommendations. Well, one classical book and then a modern one. For Italians, the betrothed, you must read it. For the Americans, The Old Man and the Sea. I mentioned Madame Bovary, but also a great writer uh, who is often neglected. The Tales by Isaac Bashevis Singer, a sublime writer. Among the moderns, Cormac McCarthy, such books as Blood Meridian, Child of God, the road, you cannot miss the road. It's a masterpiece. And even the crossing is truly his masterpiece, I must say, in my opinion. You're a connoisseur. Can you tell us if whether men write differently from women? Well, look, there are women writers who can be recognized immediately as women. Just think of Jane Austen. But this is no limitation, it's just a characteristic because Jane Austen is first and foremost a great writer before being a woman who writes. There are writers who are strongly masculine, for example, Cormac McCarthy, but even Hemingway comes to my mind. I think it's a problem of the selection of the theme and of the adaptation of the theme to the language. Can you briefly tell us can you distinguish the Italian from the American when you read a book, or even in movies? Well, in the post-war period, in the last 23 years, literature and cinema have been very self-referential, and this was negative. Not because Italians are not noble, but often we wanted to be recognizable, and we Italians, we wanted to be understood by our own friends, by our own tribe. And this was a mistake, both in cinema and in literature. There are some signs that go in a different direction. Just think of Paolo Sorrentino. In The Great Beauty, he talks about Rome, but he's very international, very universal. And then he makes Youth, which is not Italian at all, apart from some Italian crew, but the actors are not Italian, and the story has nothing to do with Italy. This is an interesting new sign. Can you talk to us about the biography, which is intertwined with literature? I mean, there are writers who write a lot. I mean, in general, in your case too, for your own writing procedures or technique. Well, I'll tell you a wonderful story written by Jorge Luis Borges, one of my favorite writers. She told the story of a man, an emperor, assigns to this man the task of drawing the map of the universe. This man is scared by this incredible, difficult task. And he starts, he paints the galaxies, then the stars, then the sun, the planets, the satellite, the earth, mountains, lakes, rivers, seas, cities, men, women, shrubs, plants, and then he finishes the painting. He understands has come to the end. He takes a few steps backward and he looks at it and he discovers he portrayed his self portrayal. Oh, wonderful. Can you give a special message, bring a take home message for our followers? They really follow us from all over the world. As an Italian who travels all over the world, I'm proud to be Italian, but I've been living for 23 years abroad. I have two mottos. Two mottos. The first one by a great Irish writer, Simon Beckett. And I'll say it in English: try again, fail better. Try again and fail better. And the second motto by great statesman Winston Churchill: never, never, never quit. So the two things go hand in hand, go together. But say you try again, you can fail again, but fail better. Well, it would be very interesting to know whether or in how your life between two cultures, because your wife comes from Jamaica, living in two or more than two cultures, how can this enrich your personality? Well, you can be rich from the cultural viewpoint, even though you don't marry a foreigner, or because richness comes from the inside. Now, having said that, the clash or the dialogue with other realities is so enriching. Otherwise, we believe that our back garden is the best possible back garden in the world in the end. Okay, you've really told us so many fascinating things. You've made such interesting points. What are your projects for tomorrow? Well, tomorrow the Le Conversazioni Festival is about to start for 10 days. I hope that the 11th edition will be as beautiful as the previous ones. As to the general project, the overarching project, well, my dream is turning this festival into a world reality. And then the second edition in Rome, the Film Fest in Rome. I hope that at the end of my mandate, I have got a 3 years term. I hope I will do my best. Now you get in touch with different cultures, different literary and cinematographic genre. Uh, Please tell us, what is it really important in life? What are the important things in life? You always must live in a detached way, as if all your conquests, all your achievements may disappear and vanish in a while, but you must put all the efforts in reaching your objectives. You must know that the sharks will come and devour your marlin, but you must do your best. Anyhow, thank you. Thanks a lot.